Welcome everyone to another watercolor class. Today we are going to be doing a lighthouse by request. So I've got this lighthouse that we're doing that is based on the one in Key West, and I've just got, to keep it simple, I've got just some green foliage. There are lots of trees and stuff around that, so this fits that, and I've used more of a tropical palm type of leaf, so it fits the locale. So the first thing I want to do is the only thing you need to worry about is just drawing in that basic shape. I would say mine's maybe a little wider than the one I have here. You want to get just at least like a slight taper to it. And then the important thing are going to be these curved lines, and they're going to curve up just slightly because the viewpoint that we have is that we are maybe like on the ground, the lighthouse is tall and we're below it. So these lines are going to appear to be curved because this is round. So I've got the slight taper, and then I put the little kind of cap on it. So I've got this, and then I've allowed for this little rim, which is going to extend beyond the edges of that main line of because this is round and it has dimension. And I put the cap on and add the little finial, and then I'm going to have a kind of a baseline here, and that's going to be for that railing area. And a little space, this will be black. And then this is going to be in the next ledge for the next railing area. And then we've got this little rolled rim to it. Pop in a little window, and then you're going to come down, and then there's some other little rolled rims, comes down, and then a window. So if you need to pause the video and get those key elements in, we're going to be doing a negative space painting on this. Since the lighthouse is going to stay mostly white, we'll add a little warmth of light to this side, a little shadow to this side. We're going to be painting the sky around it, and trying to, the key is like when you're coming in with that stroke along there, you want to keep pulling it out so you don't leave that definite brush stroke on there. And I'll kind of show you how to do that. So we're going to start off, so depending on the size of your painting, I'm going to keep this kind of thin and light. I'm going to use my ultramarine blue, and I'm actually going to bring in a little bit of the cadmium red, which is that orange color there. And I don't need much. All I want to do is just gray that blue back a little bit. So when I pull that in, you can see how that kind of grays up a little bit, and it's just not quite as bright. And I believe I'm going to use a flat brush for this, so I can pull it out and get nice and even along that line there. So you can see my mixture is fairly soupy, and I'm just going to come in right along here, and so around here, I want to allow for those little bumps. I don't want that to be too, like distinctive. Come around there. And then this part can be fairly, go ahead and make that straight. We just want to get that sky color on the, where those little white bumps are. The black will cover over. So as you can see, I'm not worried about doing necessarily like a complete fill. Any place that we leave white is going to allow us to kind of create some little soft clouds. If you get a little heavy-handed, you could always just take a little piece of your paper towel and try to blot some of that out if you wanted to, make some stronger clouds. So I'm not using this, it's very thin, but I'm not like super saturating my paper here. And then again, I want to pull that out so I'm not leaving. So the key on this is you want to kind of work quickly. Let's see, and it comes right on up. Okay, so I've eliminated having that, you know, distinctive brush stroke there. And then I can take some of the rest of this, and if I kind of tap it in, I can create some little slight, you know, variations. The sky is going to be a little more intense up above us here, and then it's going to tend to be softer as it goes out. Okay, just tap some of that in. So really for the sky, that's really about all that we need to worry about at this point. Right. And now I'm going to mix, kind of use that same mixture here, and I'm going to mix a little bit of gray. Since I'm not super saturating this, I can kind of go ahead and put a little bit of that shadow line, and that'll help to establish some of those areas here. Actually, I'm going to bring a little bit of my burnt umber here, your darker brown, in here to give me a little deeper gray. So you can see that's a little more on that taupey side, so I need more blue. It's kind of finding that balance between the blue and the brown. Again, you can see I'm not very inky here. I want to keep this thin and light. Okay, so I brought a little more water into that. I can always just kind of test a little bit and see where you're at on your color. All right, so here I'm going to start in. I'm going to bring a little bit under. So as I put a little color in, I'm going to rinse out my brush, and now I'm going to take this line here. Just soften and diffuse it out. Okay. Come up, and I've got that little tiny one here. Okay, and just kind of pull it out. I want to keep that shadow kind of on the left third of this. And I should have where, you know, the intensity of them should kind of match up with each other as I go along. Now this section here is going to be black, so technically I didn't need that part. And then I'm going to come in here. Now this isn't very wide, so I don't want that shadow to be too deep. That's probably a little deeper than I need it there. And I can come in. Lift a little bit of that out. Better. All right. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And I'm going to lay in just the foundation of the green foliage at the bottom. So I can start off with some sap green. And so on this side here, I'm just going to kind of place, let's bring a little yellow ochre with that so it's not too bright. Okay, see, I'm just going to dabble in a little bit, leaving some white space so I create some texture, and I just keep that nice and soft. And I try to keep this line here irregular so it looks a little more natural. And then bring a little bit, because this is going to be kind of some filler background for those kind of pond frond pieces coming up. Okay, so just some soft background in there. I'm just letting the brush do the work for me. I'm not really being too fussy about it. So I can mix up a little darker green. So I'll use my Viridian here. Remember, that's going to be way too weird of a color to put in here for foliage. It's just too blue. But it gives me a great base if I use one of these earthing colors here that I can earth it up. So I'm going to use my burnt sienna. Let's see how we get a much nicer color there. So here I'm just going to use this, and I'm going to think about, you know, how kind of put those spines in, you know, of those. Okay. All right. And so from there I can kind of build out, start to bring down like how these might be kind of hanging from there. And kind of think of them being kind of, you know, drapey. So I kind of do one side of the leaf, or one side of the leaves and then the other. And we will add a couple of layers into this, which will help it to have a little more dimension. Okay. So, and again, if you leave a little white space in here, that kind of helps to give some distinction between here. Like these, I'm kind of bringing them off at an angle. Just kind of darken this up here where they're a little more clustered. Okay, so I'm going to let that part dry a little bit. So I'm going to put that little sunlit side onto it, and I'm going to use a little bit of yellow ochre. Get that green in there. Get a little yellow ochre, and bring a little bit of cadmium yellow. Again, I want this super light. I just want a little kiss of sunlight on there. Okay, here's my thing, like trying to paint on this side. So this is where a little board comes in handy. I'm going to turn this around. So being right-handed, it's going to be easier for me, more natural for me to paint on this side. So here's where this on. You know, I'm even doing that black section right now because the black will cover over. Just good enough that I get that little hint there. All right. just make sure it's nice and soft. So now I can turn that back around. Then I'm going to bring just that tiniest bit, just that whisper of color kind of here on the top of these. It doesn't need to go all the way. Then if I take a clean brush, if I have my marks from my watercolor pencil, like here, I can just lift those out and make them disappear. And then I'm going to kind of come into my black, and I'll probably need 2 layers of black, so I'm going to bring that black right here. And the thing, if you keep a little bit of white in there, if you lose it, you can always come back and restore it with like a gel pen. But if you leave that little kind of gap on the edge, it's going to help differentiate between those 2 parts. Okay, so when we do this part here, we're going to bring it around, and then see how I bring it down just a little bit to show that it's coming around, and this is coming up into there. Okay, so here's where I want to be careful. Right up next to it. Again, see if it's awkward, I can turn this around. So I would probably account, like, I'm probably just, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a lazy painter, because I always want to, you know, make it easy for myself to where I'm comfortable and I'm not fighting or fussing with trying to get a shape painted in. Okay, so I've got that. And so I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this center section here, which is going to be black. And again, when you're filling this in, if I keep pulling at the wet edges, I'm going to get a smooth, see, I'm going to turn this so I get right up in here. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry a little bit. I can come up and work on this railing. So it's going to come, I'm going to extend it out right from each of these, and then I'm going to bring it back. Okay. Then I'm going to do this just kind of parallel up. Okay. And then this is going to run parallel to that curve there, and then now I can come in and just do some little vertical, I just try to keep them evenly spaced. Alright, and then on here I'll make this one a little shorter, because I made my space there a little shorter. If you wanted to be exact, you could always print out a picture of the lighthouse and transfer the image. I think it was probably about 2 summers ago, I got to go to Key West on a cruise stop, and I hadn't been there since I was a kid, and we had the best time. I really wish we, even though I live in South Florida, trying to get to, it's probably like a 7-hour drive trying to get to Key West from here, because I'm on the Gulf Coast, and it was, you know, a nice stop, and I really enjoyed it. I hope I get to, you know, stop there again sometime. It was such a nice trip. My daughter Alyssa was with me, and we had fun shopping and seeing the sights. We went to the Hemingway House and the Southern Point. It was nice because everything was, you know, walkable where we got off at. So all I'm doing in here is I'm just saying, you know, where do I maybe want to increase a little bit of my intensity there. All right, so I'm going to come back. We're going to finish the greenery down here. So you can see I've got some little golden colors, so I'm just going to pick up a little more yellow ochre and bring a little hint of green into it. And so here I can just kind of layer in some of that in amongst the first layer that I did. And I just kind of sneak this in. On top, a little bit down there. And when you use different like tones of green in your piece, it kind of helps to set off like this greenery from that greenery, so there's not, you know, any confusion. All right, and then I'm going to come back in. I'm going to take that Viridian again. I can go ahead, since I've got a bunch of yellow ochre there, I can use some of that. And then maybe this time I will do a little deeper color. I'll bring that burnt umber in. Again, as I kind of come over these, kind of think about where I want to just kind of layer in and intensify. So right now where they look a little more flat, but when I bring some like other strokes in here, you get a little more variation. So you can still see one color from the other. Like I said, this is just one for, you know, if you're trying to practice and learn to control your watercolors and what you can and can't do with them. These little short classes are the way to go, because you start to build up your confidence. And there you go. We have an easy lighthouse. It looks a little more complicated than what it is,